Hello everyone, welcome back to the classroom. Hi. Today what we are going to talk about is audit evidence and sampling. So what is this audit evidence? In order to give any kind of a judgment, you require evidence. Right? अगर आप कोई judgment देने जा रहे हो, you need an evidence in support of that. If you are finding like यार नहीं, I mean that thing or this thing that is not fine, that is not good, that is not perfect, then what is the reason behind that? And in order to support your reason, you need an evidence, right? Being like तुम लोगों ने सीधा क्या कहा कि यार नहीं भाई ये बंदी अपने को पसंद नहीं है. I mean this girl, I'm not finding that she is good, right? Why? Because you do have an evidence, because she is already committed. रिलेशनशिप स्टेटस देख लिया तुमने, एविडेंस है ना कि तुम नहीं जा सकते. There is a no entry. Why? Because she's already committed. So just like that, in order to give any kind of a decision, in order to give any kind of a judgment, right? So you require some kind of evidences in support of your judgment, right? You must have seen a lot of movies being like Jolly LLB, right? And then there are so many movies. So a judge, whenever he is going to express his opinion, whenever he is going to, give the judgment itself, that judgment is based on some evidences, right? Got it? समझ में आ रहा है? So just like that, the auditor is required to give judgment on the basis of some evidences. Now, what are those evidences? What is sampling? Right? These are the things which we are going to cover in today's classroom itself. Now, let's quickly move on to the classroom. So today what we are going to talk about is audit evidence. We are going to talk about audit evidence. After that, test checks. There are various kind of test checks which are available. And after that, we are going to talk about statistical sampling. Right. So my dear students, there is one thing which is for sure, that you guys are not required to refer anything apart from class notes. Your class notes are sufficient. I'm covering every kind of previous examination paper. I'm covering every kind of question which can be over there, right? So if I talk about this chapter only, I'm covering approximately, so there are more than 31 questions which I'm covering only for the basis of that which were over there into your previous examinations. Out of your previous examinations, I'm covering 31 questions into this chapter only, right? Along with some of my, expected questions as well. So just like onto the same phenomena, we'll be covering those questions into the next chapters as well. After that, there are some of the true and false. Okay, they can also be covered. There are particularly into some of your model test papers, your RTPs. I do find approximately 8 questions which were over there forming a part of true and false, और वो भी हमने इसमें cover किया. ठीक है? So every question you will find over there into the classroom itself. Check कर लेना आराम से. Now moving on to next. Sir, where are you? And there itself, you will not be getting a question into your examination that draw a picture of your teacher. In spite of that, you will be getting such kind of things. Okay? Now moving on to next, let's quickly talk about the topics itself. Now, an auditor, if I talk about an auditor is required to form an opinion or to express his opinion. Express his opinion on financial statements. Express his opinion on financial statements. So he is required to form an opinion that yes, whether the financial statements, they are giving you a true and fair view or not. The financial statement should give a true and fair view. That is all upon the auditor, that he is going to verify those financial statements better. After that, if he is going to express his opinion, right, plus his opinion shall be supported by proper evidence. Supported by proper evidences. Whenever I am giving any kind of an opinion, that should be supported by proper evidences, right? So that auditor can draw reasonable conclusions. that yes, on the basis of this evidence, I can say the the financial statements are true and they do carry a fair picture of financial position. Evidence के बेस पे ही ऐसा कहा जा सकता है. So, if we are talking about the evidence, we are talking about evidence. So, whenever we are going to talk about evidence, evidence should be over there, being into two types. The very first type is sufficiency. And the next is appropriateness. The very first, if I talk about sufficiency, so this talks about the quantity of evidence. The quantity of evidence. So it means if only, you can say a couple of entries worth rupees for a very, for a very nominal amount or a very minimum amount have been passed and which are not posted properly. जो आपने सही से post नहीं की है. So such kind of things will not make. If I tell you that out of 1 lakh entries which you have, there are only 2 entries which are not correct, right? For which the rectification has been done. So you should have a proper quantity. You should have a proper quantity of evidence. That yes, out of 1 lakh entries, I do find that yes, 1000 entries were fake. Right? After that, if I talk about appropriateness, they do talk about the relevance and reliability of evidence. In short terms, you can say quality of evidence. You can say quality of evidence. Simple. समझ में आया? Over here we are talking about quantity and over here we are referring to quality of evidence. Right? So, first of all, there are some factors. Please pause. Pause करो यहाँ पे. Pause. Now, there are some factors which do decide. Factors which influence auditors, judgment. On evidences, so that the evidence is proper or not, right? So there are few factors which decide that yes, the evidences which have been obtained, they are sufficient and appropriate or not. They should be sufficient and they should be appropriate. Both of the qualities should be over there as well. Right? Understood? Now moving on to next. The very first is the risk of misstatement. Risk of misstatement. Beta, I'll be writing only these headings itself. I do have confidence that my student can write a couple of lines when it comes to any heading. इस line को देखते हुए I'll tell you that what is required to be written. Hope आप लोग एक line, दो line लिख सकते हो. Right? So the degree of risk of misstatement, which that is affected by some factors itself. That is all about what is the size of your business, right? What is the financial position of your business? The risk of misstatement. There can be a misstatement into the vouchers, into the various kind of accounts and records which you have presented. उसके अंदर कुछ ना कुछ misstatement हो सकती है. After that, materiality. Materiality over here refers to the relevance, right? If something is over there which has been posted, you are required to present, right, the relevant evidence for that. The evidence should be properly relevant. It should not be being like that just because of an error in profit and loss account, the rent was not received. But you have mentioned over there that yes, the rent is received. That was over there in arrears, but you mentioned as the rent is received. So for that you can furnish straight away the bank statement that yes, the amount is not received. That is the relevant thing. You can furnish the bank statement of the either party which is there as a tenant. Tenant की bank statement दिखा दो that yes, rent has been transferred or not. They are the relevant evidences. Okay. जैसे तुम किसी और से बात कर रहे हो या नहीं, ये तुम्हारी WhatsApp chat देख के पता चल जाएगा. So just like that, WhatsApp chat, they are admissible as an evidence in Supreme Court. पता है? हाँ, तो वो कहती है ना, बेबी मेरे को तुम्हारा फोन दिखाना, पता चल जाता है. After that, moving on to next, talking about the previous experience. Previous experience. I mean the experience which the auditor has gained into his career itself. That is all about the previous experience of auditor. That means how much experience he has gained, right? How much experience he has gained during his audit. बेटा, if I talk about ना, तो इंडिया में experience चलता है, talent कोई नहीं पूछता है. We talk about experience. After that, if I talk about the next is information. The type of information which is available with the organization, that also affects the judgment on evidence. Because if the information is not proper, which is available, the adequate information is not available, how the auditor will be, the auditor will not be able to express his opinion properly. Moving on to next, there are analytical reviews. Analytical reviews, that means the trend which has been indicated, or let me write it over here, trend which has been indicated by accounting ratios and analysis. Let me give you a very simple phenomena, being like our accounting ratios do determine the financial position. If I talk about how the debt equity ratio, the ideal debt equity ratio is 2:1, sir. Okay, so this is the ideal one. When it comes to a government company, this can be 6:1. This is the ideal one. If the debt equity ratio is 8:1, the company's financial position is adequate, sound or not? No, it's not sound. If I talk about it's 1:1, it's great, sir. That's really sound. Okay. Sound over here does not mean गाना वाना चल रहा है कोई, but sound over here, that means they are properly able to satisfy their needs. Now moving on to next part. So if I talk about that, the availability of the evidence depends upon, or you can say the auditor's judgment on evidence is influenced by some factors. Because first of all, the evidence shall be relevant. The information available with the company itself. If the company does not have proper kind of vouchers which are available, then what kind of evidence will you get? You won't be able to get even a single evidence from there as well. Got it? Please pause. Moving on to next part. The next is types of audit evidence. Types of audit evidence. So audit evidence, this can be classified first of all on the basis of, let me write basis, then let me share evidence, right? And I'll give you examples for everything. So first of all, if I talk about source, the source may be internal, the source may be external. Internal over here refers to the availability of the evidence within the organization, right? So just like example, copy of sales invoice, that is available within your company, right? Or you can say goods received notes, right? So they are available within the organization, right? But if I talk about the external sources, just like customers' acknowledgement, they have been, ये कहां से आया? कस्टमर के पास से. The source, the origin from where you got the evidence, that is not within the organization. Beta, you have, you sold some of the goods, so sales invoice will be prepared within your company, right? Customer's acknowledgement is given by customer. Yes. Acha. Now, can you please tell me, insurance policy is given by? Insurance policy is given by insurance company. Yes. So that is again an external source. Internal sources are those sources which are available within the company itself. Beta, jinko lag raha hai the class is moving slow, you can increase the speed itself. Okay. Now, moving on to next, if I talk about nature. So this nature is being like, the very first is documentary. After that, it's oral, and then it's visual. If I talk about documentary, so documentary are various kind of vouchers, these are various kind of bills which are available. They are documentary, they are properly printed, everything is over there, right? Oral is, I will tell you guys on about internal control questionnaire. Internal control questionnaire is over there. And when it comes to this questionnaire, you will find that so many kind of answers are over there. If I talk about the answers itself, they are taken orally. That yes, whether do you have a proper verification system for cash. What you will find that yes, when it comes to any company, there will be few people who will be managing cash itself. Sir, we know, above than more than 2 lakh rupees we cannot receive. Yes, you cannot. But still, receiving 2 lakh rupees from 2,000 people will give you a huge amount. Right? So, internal control questionnaire. This is something which we are going to discuss later on. If I talk about visual, what is visual? That means physical inspection of assets. I'm talking about, yes, my company do have 750 crore rupees of assets. Actually, they are available or not? Right? सच में है भी या नहीं? हकीकत या फसाना? Right? Now, moving on to next, please pause. Pause करो यहाँ पे. Beta, these are just examples. They are just for your understanding. Okay? Now, moving on to next. Please pause. So, on the basis, next basis is impact. The impact is going to be, first of all, it's confirmatory. Confirmatory. Then it's persuasive. Persuasive. And then it's going to be conclusive. Right. If I talk about the confirmatory kind of an evidence, right, they provide additional information, provide additional corroborative information. What is this corroborative? Corroborative क्या होता है? Corroborative is confirmation. They provide additional confirmation, right? But if I talk about the next part, so persuasive leads to conclusion by implication. By something which is implied, something which is based on situation, right? Conclusion, they provide complete assurance. That yes, looking at the thing, you will identify straight away that yes, this is the mistake. Depreciation. That is the mistake itself. Right? Now moving on to next part. So this is all about on the basis of impact. So there are no examples? No. Because this is something which is over there as an additional. You are checking out some of the vouchers and you got some of the additional vouchers as well. You were checking out internal vouchers. You got the external as well. You were talking about the sales invoice. Right? From the outside party, you got the purchase invoice as well. And you find that yes, there is a difference between both of them. जो आपकी कंपनी पे था और जो बाहर कस्टमर पे था, दोनों अलग अलग थे, तो पता चल गया मुझे एक एडिशनल कंफर्मेशन भी मिल गई कस्टमर से दैट यस देयर इज समथिंग फिशी व्हिच इज गोइंग ऑन. प्लीज पॉज करो, pause. Now let me tell you guys more on internal and external evidences. Internal evidence and external evidence. Because whenever we are writing any kind of difference between, you are just required to remember the points itself. Right? Now, I am talking about the audit from the, we are going to discuss from the auditor's point of view. So internal evidences are those evidences that has been created within, you can say is created and used and retained within the client's organization. So why it's client organization? Because beta you are going to be the auditor. For you, they are going to be clients. Right? Understood? So external evidences, they originate outside the client's organization. Client's organization. How this can be done? So if your client is Infosys, so this is available outside the Infosys office. That this may be available with the supplier of Infosys, from the supplier of raw material. This may be available with the, you can say, the customers of Infosys, right? Now moving on to next. So this was the meaning itself. This was the meaning, definition, whatever you want to write. This was the meaning, right? So first of all, you are required to remember the points. The basis will come out on their own, right? Now the next is, they may not always constitute a direct accounting source document, because there may be, just like if I talk about the purchase requisitions, so that is just a purchase request, right? They could not constitute a direct account source document. So, but when it comes to external ones, they are prepared in ordinary course of business. In ordinary course of business and form part of records. Over here, if I talk about the internal evidences, there may be a situation that you have given a kind of purchase request aapne di, but you have not purchased those items. So they cannot be all the time available into the record itself. But if I talk about the external ones, they are prepared on ordinary basis and they are going to be a part of records itself. Right? So this is used for accounting. This is used for accounting. So now let me tell you about the auditor's role. Auditor's role. Sir, can you please tell me, if I tell you about that, yes, there is a company which is supplier, तो वो हमारे को क्यों देगा अपने accounts? क्यों देगा वो? क्यों नहीं देगा? There is also going to be a chartered accountant. After once their accounts are finalized, you can surely check them, right? Or if that company is your subsidiary, or if that company is your holding or associate company, you can straight away demand such kind of things. Your suppliers and your rest of the people, they are going to cooperate. So auditors' role, so they are internal evidences, they are provided to auditor by internal sources. By internal sources. But if I talk about the auditor's rule, so it may be obtained directly by auditors sometimes. This can be obtained by auditor. What are you talking about? Yes. Because if I tell you guys about that this can be obtained by auditor, then I am referring to this various kind of certificates. Example, certificate regarding bank balance. Regarding bank balance. There are various kind of certificates which are required. Right? So if auditor is giving a kind of a certificate, then auditor is not within the organization. But you are not the auditor is not the internal source. Auditor is an external source. Got it? Right? So just like that, there are various kind of confirmations which are required from the auditor. That can be related to the confirmation regarding bank balance. That can be related to confirmation of balances of debtors, creditors, borrowings. बहुत सारी चीजों की कंफर्मेशन देते हो आप लोग, सबके पैसे लेते हो, राइट? सो कैन आई गो, आई मीन प्लीज पॉज करो यहां पे, पॉज. यस. So if I talk about the internal sources are not much reliable. Not much reliable. And they are more reliable than internal sources. So this is all about the reliability. So they are not much reliable because you have generated a sales invoice, right? Or you have generated a purchase request, but after that the purchase was not made, or the purchase was returned. So, but the purchase request was generated only, and that is not over there into your accounts, right? Now, let's go ahead. Let's talk about the procedure to obtain that audit evidence, right? Please pause. Pause करो यहाँ पे. Pause. Yes. Now, so if I talk about that there is an auditor, right? There is an auditor. Auditor is looking forward to get an evidence, and on the basis of this evidence, he is going to form an opinion. He is going to share an opinion on financial statements of the company itself, or financial statements of client's company. Now, how the audit procedure can be done to obtain the audit evidence, right? So we do have a couple of things about this. So first of all, if I talk about, there is the very first is you can write audit procedures. Audit procedures to obtain audit evidence. Right? So very first is the risk assessment procedure. Risk assessment procedure. I know, थोड़ा boring लग रहा है, but still it's okay. Risk assessment procedure. This is required to be performed. So they are performed. They are performed. The very first is to obtain an understanding. To obtain an understanding of entity. So that you can understand the entity, you can understand its environment, you can understand the client's company properly, you can understand the various kind of internal controls which are over there. Right? The next is to identify and assess. To identify and access the level of material misstatement. That means the various kind of misstatements which are available at financial statements and other assertion levels, right? So first of all, this is done so that you can understand the company properly, you can understand the identity properly, and you can understand that how much level of risk is involved. I mean, where the risk is less, where the risk is more. So this is just about a risk assessment procedure. So if I talk about a government organization, the risk of misstatements are very less, right? है ना? होता ना? Sarcasm कहते हैं ना उसको? So next is further audit procedures. So this is, after that what happens? The very first is a risk assessment procedure. This is done to carry out the level of risk and the understanding that you should understand the kind of company which is going on over there. Further audit procedures. This further audit procedures, they have been divided into a couple of things. The very first is compliance procedure. Compliance procedure, and the next is substantive procedure. Right? So compliance procedure and substantive procedure. Now, if I talk about further audit procedures, let me give you a difference between both of them. This is going to clarify a lot of things. So the very first is compliance procedure. Compliance procedure. And the next part is substantive procedure. Substantive procedure. So beta, I am telling you guys again and again that you are not required to memorize the basis. Sirf in points ko yaad rakhna, basis you can make it on your own itself. Right? So very first is, if I talk about the compliance procedures, they are just done to test the effectiveness of internal controls. That how much effective your internal controls are. Right? So after that, substantive procedures are done to check the validity of the data. That the data which you have collected, that is complete, accurate, and that is valid. That should not be being like that. If I talk about today itself, you are referring to the data of the previous year or previous to previous year. Right? So the very first is, these are tests designed to obtain reasonable assurance that internal controls are properly effective and can be relied upon. Understood? So if I talk about the next thing, so the substantive procedure, that is just because, so these are tests designed to obtain evidence as to completeness, accuracy, validity of data produced by accounting system. So this is all about the validity of the data produced, right? You are going to check the validity, and over here we are going to check the internal controls, that how much effective they are, right? So this was the meaning, this was the definition. right? If I talk about the next topic, that is all about once the compliance procedure is done, right? Once you have carried out the compliance procedure, talking about the various types, after compliance test, auditor shall determine the nature, extent and timing of substantive procedures to be carried out. If I talk about the various things, so there are no classifications in compliance procedures. No classifications, right? But if I talk about the substantive procedure, they are of two types. The very first type is test of details of transactions. Test of details of transactions and balances. Right? The next is analysis of ratios and trends including resulting investigation from unusual fluctuation. So first of all, once they are done, there are no classifications. But if I talk about the substantive procedure, they are of two types. But first of all requires the detailed procedure. That means you are required to check out, or you are required to verify everything in detail. But if I talk about the second classification, that is just an analysis on the basis of various ratios and trends. You are going to compute various ratios, just like you guys, if you do remember, if I talk about your senior secondary 11th or 12th class, your accounts teacher would have given you an assignment being like that you are required to calculate the ratios from the balance sheet. Ratio wala chapter tha ek. Just like that, we are going to calculate some ratios, and after that we are going to make a particular investigation if we find something being like this, there is something which is unusual. कुछ अगर unusual है तो उसके अंदर we are going to find out the resulting investigations, right? So this can be over there being as types, this can be over there being as classifications. Got it? अगर पहले तो डिटेल में, दूसरी बात कुछ गड़बड़ होती है तो वहां पे हम एनालिसिस और सबसे पहले रेशियोज निकालेंगे, कुछ गड़बड़ लगती है तो वहां पे इन्वेस्टिगेट करेंगे. सिंपल, राइट? Doing the analysis of ratios, if you find something is over there which is unusual, then you can investigate accordingly. Right? Now moving on to next. Please pause करो यहाँ पे बेटा. Compliance procedure seeks to provide that internal control, seeks to provide evidence that internal controls are applied as prescribed, or they are over there properly effective. That is an evidence. Compliance procedure will assure you that yes, internal controls are applied properly. So the next is all about substantive procedures. They seek to provide evidence. They seek to provide evidence. They seek to provide evidence as to accuracy of amount or account balance, because they will tell you about the data. The data is the account balance or the various kind of amounts which are lying over there into different accounts. So that do provide an evidence that yes, the data which is furnished by account with every kind of an account. But when it comes to every kind of an account, you will find the closing balance. एक closing balance होता है, एक opening balance होता है. So these figures are correct. These figures are absolutely correct. This is an evidence which can be obtained by substantive procedures. Got it? So this is all about the nature of evidence. I can write over here. I can write over here being like nature of evidence. बेटा बहुत स्लो चल रहा हूँ, ध्यान देना. The next is all about these tests are carried out. These tests are carried out to check efficiency. Of internal control system. Got it? But if I talk about the next part itself, over here, these tests are carried out on all aspects of financial statement. On all aspects of financial statements. That's not system, that's statement. On all aspects of financial system. Statement, पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है. On all aspects of financial statement to obtain sufficient, relevant and reliable evidence that yes, whatever the things which are over there forming every part of financial statement, whatever the information which is over there, for which the outcome or the final part is financial statement. जिन सबसे निकल के बेटा फाइनली हम फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट बनाते हैं. अगर आपके पास वो सारी चीजें करेक्ट है तो फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट अपने आप करेक्ट हो जाएगी. If I talk about the parts of financial statement or the aspects of financial statement, if they are correct, then automatically the financial statement will be correct. Right? So they are covered, they are carried out to check out the efficiency of internal control system, whereas they are carried out to check all aspects of financial statement, so that the information which you have on your financial statement is sufficient, relevant and reliable. So this is all about the purpose. You can write it being as purpose, you can write it being as objective, right? That why you are carrying out these kind of things. Should I go ahead now? I'm feeling sleepy. Okay, go wash your face again and come back. Now moving on to next. Please pause. Yes, very good. Now moving on to next. So the next is assertion. Assertion is all about an auditor is concerned with following assertions. An auditor is concerned with following assertions. So what is this assertion? Oh my God, you guys and your English is marvelous. It is wonderful. Assertion is something, can be a declaration. It can be a declaration. Right? So auditor is concerned with the following declarations. The very first is existence of internal control. Existence of internal control. After that, the next is effectiveness of internal control. Effectiveness of internal control. The next is continuity of internal control. Continuity of internal control. So that yes, your internal control systems are in existence, moreover they are effective and they are working on continuous basis. That is the total scenario. After that, if I talk about the assertions, so auditor is concerned with following assertions. Well, following assertions. Existence of, if I talk about the existence, that means those assets and those liabilities are existing on that given date. That yes, the data which you have provided, that is correct. You can, if your company says or if your client says that we do have assets of 1000 crore rupees, that yes, you are going to check the existence of those assets. That yes, they do have assets of 1000 crore rupees. समझ में आया? Until unless. The next is the occurrence. Occurrence over here refers to that if I talk about a particular transaction, right, that transaction actually occurred. That is not about that yes, you have just passed the bookish entry and the transaction has not taken place. Right? Occurrence of the transaction pertaining to a particular entity that has actually taken place. You have passed a sales entry, that yes, the sale has been actually done. Right? After that, the completeness. The completeness. Completeness, that means the records which you have, they are absolutely complete. There is nothing over there, any kind of an asset, any kind of a liability, any kind of a transaction which is not recorded. Okay. The next is all about, okay, the next can be all about being like valuation. Valuation. If I talk about the valuation, the assets and liabilities, the asset and liability, they are recorded at a proper valuation, right? The valuation is done properly. It is not like that they are not recorded at the proper value, or else you have recorded the assets at a very high value and you have recorded liabilities at a very low value, right? आपने assets की value ज़्यादा करते जाओगे तो क्या होगा? It will look being like that yes, company is a sound company. Now the next is all about, okay, measurement. What is this measurement? Measurement is whenever you are going to record any transaction, whenever you are recording any transaction, that transaction has been recorded with proper amount has been allocated to that transaction. It is not like being that yes, the transaction was there for 5 lakh rupees and you have recorded only 4 lakh rupees. Right? Now, you got some of the evidences. Right? Pause over here. Please pause. Now, so there's an auditor over here. If I talk about this auditor got some of the evidences. Got some of the evidences. Now this auditor is going to form an opinion. He is going to form a judgment. You can say a judgment, you can say an opinion. That does not matter until unless we are going to study things in detail. So auditor is going to process the judgment. They are going to process the judgment using the evidences which they have obtained. Right? So auditor is going to form the judgment on the basis of the evidences. So this process is, the very first point is going to be identify the assertions. To be examined. To be examined. So first of all, you need to identify the things which are required to be examined. After that, you are going to evaluate necessary assertions. Evaluation of necessary assertions as to materiality, and relative importance. Right? After that, you are required to collect necessary information. You are required to collect the necessary information, or you can say evidences about the assertions for which you are going to examine the things. Once that is done, then you are going to analyze and evaluate. You are going to analyze and you are going to evaluate the evidence into valid. You are going to analyze and evaluate the evidence into valid, or else that can be invalid. That can be relevant, then can be irrelevant. Right? That can be appropriate, that can be inappropriate. Right? That can be sufficient, that cannot be sufficient. So you are going to evaluate those kind of evidences. After that, what is going to happen? You are going to formulate the judgment on financial statements. You are going to form the judgment on the financial statements as to fairness of assertions. This is the process of making judgment on the basis of the evidences which are available. Right? Got it? So you guys can pause again and you guys can note down these kind of things. Now, you will get a term over there. You will get a term over there being like best audit evidence. There is nothing when it comes to the practical aspect being like best audit evidence whenever an auditor is over there. This is all the way only theoretical. You will not find it being like into your actual realities, into all your audit situations. But what is going to happen? Whenever there's an auditor will particularly what he will do, he will rely on prima facie evidences. Or you can say prima facie persuasive evidences. Persuasive evidences. Considered adequate in absence of suspicious circumstances. The evidences which are considered to be adequate in not in absence, in presence of suspicious circumstances, they are the best audit evidences. जो आपको लगता है वो evidence ठीक है, हाँ इसके ऊपर we can rely, then that can be adequate. Plus, auditor should look into more compelling evidences. That means the more compelling evidences means he should try to obtain as much as corroborative evidences. Jitne evidences, as much as evidences he can collect, the best judgment he can make, the best opinion he can frame. Got it? Understood? Now, should I go ahead? Yes, please. Now, let us quickly move on to, now first of all, we are going to talk about the next topic, that is all about the test checks. Test check does not mean that how the examination things will be checked. Please pause karo. Now, so test checks. If I talk about the test checks, they have been divided into two parts. So first of all, let us do a difference between test check and routine check. That what is test check and what is routine check. Let us make a difference between both of them. Okay. So test check is, first of all, it is an auditing procedure. It is accepted during auditing procedure. During auditing procedure. Right? Wherein in this kind of a procedure, only part of transactions is checked to form an opinion. That means they just took out some of the samples. Instead of checking all the transactions, they will just check only a part of transactions, being like they're just going to take some samples. They're going to take some sample transactions only. समझ में आया बेटा? Now, if I talk about the routine checking is detailed checking. Of all transactional aspects. That means you are going to check every kind of carry forward, every kind of calculation, even the postings into ledgers, casting of ledger accounts, their balances, everything will require the detailed checking. Right? So this was the definition, this was the meaning itself. Got it, beta? After that, if we talk about the test checks, so this is done to obtain a reasonable level of satisfaction about all transactions. Right? But by verifying few representative transactions called sample. You'll come to know about one more term being over there named as sampling. Now moving on to the next part. So this is all about that they are taking the samples over here. They are not talking about the detailed things, right? They're just talking about the sample done by verifying few transactions. But by them, they are going to give you an opinion about everything. But when it comes to the election results, you must have heard about exit poll. In exit polls, they just go through with some samples. Sample आपने उधर भी पढ़ा है, क्या कहते हैं आपका your economics as well. Now moving on to next, to obtain reasonable level of satisfaction. But over here in this routine check, there is few things are done. Detailed checking is done to verify arithmetical accuracy. That means every kind of subtraction, addition, everything has to be done properly. Right? After that, verify accuracy of posting to ledgers from your journals. Right? After that, to check the balance of ledgers. The next is to ensure no figures are altered. That means the figures which are over there, they are as it is. No figures are altered. Got it? So this is all about the total scenario. This is all about the purpose or objective of these checks. Purpose, or you can say objective of these checks. Got it, beta? Understood? Should I go ahead now? Pause karo fir se, beta. Pause. Yes, if I talk about the test checking will give you saving in time. They will give you saving in time. In spite of checking every transaction, you are required to just check few transactions. Proper and careful test. Careful test checking is helpful and serves the objective. If you are doing it properly, that is also going to serve the objective itself. But that is not, you can say effective everywhere, because not everywhere you will be getting too many transactions. If transactions over there, if I talk about Nike, right? If I talk about Nike, or if I talk about let me give you an example of Baba Ramdev's Patanjali. You cannot check every transaction, because every day there are lakhs of transactions which are taking place every day. Somebody purchased a Patanjali Ayurveda soap, right? किसी ने साबुन खरीदा, उसकी एंट्री चेक करोगे क्या? कस्टमर के घर तक जाओगे? नहीं. You are just required to check some samples over there, right? Over here, in such kind of things, volume of work is reduced. Volume of work is reduced, and after that, the time is available for other audits. For other audits. Right? So these are particularly the advantages of your test checking. If I talk about the advantages of routine checking, so that is the checking and posting. Checking of posting and ledgers. Checking of posting and ledgers. Arithmetical accuracy. Accuracy can be checked. Arithmetical accuracy can be checked. Trial balance tally is facilitated. Tally is facilitated. That means you are going to tally your trial balance as well. After that, easy detection of frauds, because you are going to check everything. Easy detection of frauds or errors. And in this kind of a scenario, the work can be delegated to. Work can be delegated to junior staff. Just like in such kind of a situation, right, what you will find that yes, in such kind of a situation, my dear student, you will find that yes, the work has been given to the concerned trainee. But over here in test checking, there are only few transactions which are required to be taken care of. The work cannot be given to junior staff. Okay. Now, let us talk about the disadvantages as well. Please pause. Pause karo fir se beta. Pause. Yes. Now, talking about the disadvantages. The disadvantages. So first of all, client staff may become careless. Right? Client staff may be careless, because over there, if they need to check just a couple of transactions, they can say like, oh my god, I'm not happy. After that, there may be some errors and frauds may be undetected. Few things are over there which can be detected, but if you are just taking out some of the samples, the chances of frauds and errors which can be undetected, they are more. बेटा और ज्यादा चांस हो जाएगा कि आप डिटेक्ट नहीं कर पाओगे अगर कुछ ही चेक कर रहे हो बस, राइट। ऑल आइटम्स आर नॉट चेक्ड। आइटम्स, आइटम मत लिखने दो, आइटम के साथ ट्रांजैक्शन लिख देता हूं वरना पता नहीं क्या समझोगे। Items and transactions are not checked because we used to take care of only just the samples itself, right? An element of doubt is present. An element of doubt is present all the time, that just because we have checked only few things, that there may be a probability that yes, there are few errors, there are few frauds which may be over there, right? It is, first of all, if I talk about, it's a highly mechanical process, requires a lot of efforts and time. Highly mechanical process. If I talk about the routine checking, right? This is a kind of a monotonous activity. Monotonous activity and may lead to boredom. May lead to boredom. A person may get bored on checking the day-to-day identities. बेटा बात बता रहा हूँ, when it comes to this audit, you may find it being like कि यार बहुत बोरिंग है, पर तुम लोगों को सबका पेट बाहर निकाल देगी। सब पेट बाहर निकाल देगी मतलब, I mean you start eating very delicious things. Monotonous activity, I mean the same activity which is required to be done on daily basis, right? Now, after that, if I talk about compensating errors, and errors of principle will not come into light. Principle will not come into light. You will not be able to identify such kind of things being compensating errors, and errors are principle. Got it? Understood? Now let's quickly move on to this test checking, right? The next topic, please pause karo beta. The next topic is pause, right? Understood? So these cannot be identified. Now moving on to next, you guys have already paused. Now, so next is all about the auditing in depth, or that can be auditing or examination in depth of a sample itself. If I talk about both of them, the things which you guys have covered. So let's talk about auditing in depth. Or next can be examination of sample in depth. Or sample in depth. Right. So we'll just do one thing. Let's leave this topic here, because you guys are already aware of that when it comes to the sampling part. What happens that we used to take a sample, and after that when it comes to that sample is examined in depth itself. So if I talk about the test checking, so we were talking about the test checking. This test checking do have some features. These features are, first of all, so if I talk about, there are some features. So first of all, there should be scientifically selected sample. Scientifically selected sample should be taken. Right? So first of all, because it is a mathematical truth that whenever you take scientifically selected samples, they are going to reflect the exact, features and characteristics of that group itself. After that, it is just an estimation process. So test checking is an estimation process. So this can never be totally reliable. It cannot give accurate results. They will just give you an estimation. They cannot give you accurate results. Now moving on to next, there will be coverage of material items. There will be coverage of material items. That means entries which are involving large amount. Material items means large amount transactions are over there. Or you can say there are some material transactions which are required for verification, which are picked up for the verification, right? So in that kind of a time period, whatsoever is over material, जो भी चीजें वहाँ पे material है, relevant है, you are going to cover them only, right? Full coverage over a period of time. Full coverage over a period of time. If I talk about test checking is normally planned in such a way so that whatever the audit programs which are over there for 3 to 5 years for a kind of medium or large size company, so that is generally completed within a period of 1 year, right? The full coverage of those transactions is done only into a very limited time span. How that is done, let me tell you. So if you took for 5 years you are going to do the test checking, right? This test checking will get completed in 1 year. How that will be completed in 1 year? If I talk about 5 years, let me give an example of 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004 and 2005. So in this I am going to check the January, February, over here March and April, then it's May, June, then it's July, August, then it's September, October, then it's 2006, November, and then it's December. Got it? So this is how the phenomena are going to be covered. Whenever it comes to the material items, they are taken care of. Right? Now moving on to next part. There may be a surprise element. Now what is this surprise element is all about? The staff, or you can say the management of the auditing company, that means the trainees who are there with the auditor, जो auditor के साथ जो trainees हैं and the rest of the people, they are not anticipated for test checking, right? They otherwise, because they are going to predict the areas and periods to be covered in any year, and they are required to first of all examine everything in detail. So you can leave the surprise element here. Just leave surprise element. Let me write something else over here. The next is flexibility. Flexibility. So test checking particularly becomes a routine, predictable and mechanical. That is everything. Auditor is required to keep changing the minds of test checking, because at every interval, in January, February, in March, April, the situations are going to be different. So auditor has to keep in mind the flexibility, because at every time the situation which was over there when it comes to business in January, February, that would have changed in March, April. After that, the flexibility, that is all about the judgment based. So, if I talk about the test checking, that all depends upon the judgment of the auditor for a particular situation. The judgment, particularly if I talk about the judgment of an auditor, it depends upon so many factors. The factors are these factors. The judgment of an auditor depends upon these things, right? Oh, sorry. The judgment of an auditor, where it is. Where it is. We have covered that kind of thing. So we have covered it somewhere. I'm not finding it properly over here as well. Now, moving on to next. So the next is factors to be considered. Factors to be considered in test checking. In test checking. if I talk about the test checking, there are various factors which are required to be considered. So factors, that means whenever you are going to frame a plan for test checking, what are the things which are required to be kept in mind? The very first is size of organization for which this test checking is required to be done. Size of organization. Next is state and efficacy. State and efficacy of internal control. What is the state? And the state means the position. Sir, what is efficacy? Oh my God! I'm required to explain the meanings as well. Okay, I'll do that. Efficacy is all about the ability to produce a particular result, right? After that, adequacy and reliability of books and records. How much adequate and how much reliable the books and records are, right? After that, tolerable error range. If you are finding being like that 90% of the transactions are in error, then what is going to happen? That is not tolerable, right? After that, degree of desired confidence, right? So these things are required to be done. These things are required to be considered when you are moving forward for test checking, right? These things are required, but sir, where test checking is used? Okay, the question is when test checking can be used. Where you will find that test checking is beneficial. कहाँ पे टेस्ट चेकिंग क्या होगी? बेनिफिशियल होगी. Where volume of transactions is quite large. If you do have 1 lakh crore transactions, if I talk about, चलो Indian company ले लेते हैं बेटा. If I talk about Patanjali, they do have a lot of transactions, right? When auditor has very little time. To check all the transactions, right? Or else if he is finding like that number of transactions are identical. The number of transactions are identical or homogeneous. Or homogeneous, right? They are of same nature. And or is the next is internal controls are satisfactory. Whether they are manual, whether they are computerized, they are satisfactory. So at these situations, you can use the test checking. Test checking will be considered appropriate. Right? Got it? Now moving on to next. If we talk about test checking, then why one should go for test checking? Right? Now, what are the various advantages of test checking? What are the various advantages of test checking? The very first is that you will get expertise, because in this kind of a situation only the senior staff will participate. It involves the applications of mind and intelligent judgment, right? So auditor is required to use his expertise very much carefully, and they will not involve junior staff in this, right? After that, this is scientific assessment of risk. scientific assessment of risk, because it is a mathematical statement that if you have taken the samples very much properly, then you are going to take a very proper or efficient or effective result, right? This is saving in time, then it's reduction in work. In spite of employing so many people, what you will find that only few people are over there who are working, right? So these are the advantages. Now let me share some of the disadvantages as well. Disadvantages of test checking. So this is, first of all, it's naive and biased. So this means that test checking can be restored to, it's a matter of auditor's personal assessment. If auditor is over there and he is feeling like that he is biased, the company belongs to his friend, then in that kind of a situation, my dear student, what is going to happen, that he will be totally biased. If any of the transactions, if he is feeling like कि ये transaction सही नहीं है, फिर भी वो क्या कहेगा कि सही है. It is unauthentic. It is unauthentic. How it is unauthentic? Because it lacks authenticity. It does not give auditor an idea about the degree of reliability for the findings into the whole test of series. There is higher risk. The risk is very much high, right? After that, it is difference in activity levels, right? After that, if I talk about the test checking, so this is the same phenomena. Beta, if I talk about January, February to March and April, there may be a situation that at this time the business was down and into March itself the business has taken a growth, right? There may be a situation in this month itself, in March, April, the business was on high demand, but when it comes to rest of the year, it was on low demand. There may be a situation you are just taking out the samples, right? Got it? Understood? Now, these are, if I talk about, they are the things where test checking can be used, right? Where test checking can be used. So there are some items which are not suitable for test checking. Items not suitable for test checking. There are few items which are not suitable for test checking. So the very first is the opening and closing entry. Opening and closing entry. You cannot take the samples from there as well. If I talk about the bank reconciliation statement, hope I am not required to explain this. You people know much more than your teacher onto this topic as well, right? Balance sheet items, they are also not over there, which can be over there. That yes, doing test checking on these items is fine, just like loans, advances, assets, liabilities, right? Balance sheet items. After that, matters involving estimation plus computation. Matters involving estimation as well as computation. I mean, what are those matters? Just like depreciation. Depreciation involves computation. Royalty, like royalty. After that, the next is transactions are important. Transactions are important and material. And material, right? After that, Transactions recognized by law. Transactions recognized by law to be looked in carefully, by auditor. So when you will become a professional, you will find that yes, there are few situations. So what are those? The very first is dividend. While declaring dividend, things are fair. If I talk about managerial remuneration, right? Shares issued for cash and shares issued for consideration other than cash, right? So that is, you have to check that yes, whether the company has received the money actually or not. Seasonal industry. If I talk about seasonal industry, what is a seasonal industry? Just like if I talk about Diwali, that means the crackers factory. That is seasonal, right? If I talk about Independence Day, the kite factory itself, the kite and that thread factory. Moving on to next, transaction involving statutory payment. Transactions involving statutory payments. Well, statutory payments or statutory dues. Statutory payments or statutory dues, just like you have paid your ESI, employee state insurance, you have paid provident fund, सुना ऐसा कुछ? You have paid TDS, tax deducted at source. अच्छा, TDS होता है, TCS भी होता है. TCS क्या होता है? What is TCS? सर TCS तो वो कंपनी है ना, टाटा कंसल्ट. अरे चाचा, tax collected at source, deducted at source, collected at source. There's a difference. Huh? So now let's quickly move on to the things being like, there are few things like precautions in test taking. Precautions in test checking. The precautions which are required to be made when doing the test checking. The very first is classification. Under proper heads, you should make a proper classification as per the proper heads. That yes, you are taking one sample from first head, then you are taking second sample from second head itself, right? After that, the next is system study, right? Systems and procedures, if I talk about, so processing a transaction is right from the beginning and end should be over there into a sequential order. I mean, evaluation, documentation, recording and evidencing, everything should be done into a sequential order. Whatever the transactions which you are taking, that should start from the earliest and will move on to the end. Efficacy of internal control. Efficacy of internal control. The total of internal control system, right? So first of all, you should be satisfied about that yes, there are internal controls and these internal controls are operating effectively. These internal controls are operating effectively. Got it? There should be clarity of plan that how you are going to take those samples and how those samples are going to be worked upon. Right? Scientific sample selection. Scientific sample selection. That how those samples are required to be selected. What is going to be the manner? Right? So that should be over there selected in an unbiased manner. If a transaction has been done with the brother of auditor for what rupees, 10 crore rupees, right, and that is one of the material transactions, he is leaving it. He is leaving that transaction. Why? Because he is biased. Right? After that, prohibited list. What is this prohibited list? Prohibited list is this one. This is the prohibited list. Prohibited items for test checking. You are required to ensure, right? You are required to ensure that these transactions are not into test checking. If they are, then you are required to do the verification separately. बेटा अगर है तो उसको बाहर करो, अलग से उसको verify करो, ठीक है? Now moving on to next, that is all about prohibited areas. After that, what is going to be the sample size? What is going to be the sample size? Right? After that, the materiality. Whatever the samples or whatever the errors which you are going to find, materiality of errors. The errors should be material and for a particular audit, right? There should not be any kind of errors being like which are not material. Beta, hope सब लोग इस पे दो लाइनें लिख सकते हो. Whatever I am telling you, that is really simple. I hope you guys can write one line, two lines on these things. If you find this in examination, then these things are just the headings itself. Okay, you are just required to make two lines on this. Got it? Understood? Now moving on to next part. Please pause karo beta. Pause. Yes, very good. Then it's statistical. Sampling. This is statistical sampling. Yes, this is particularly, now we are going to talk about importance of probability theory. So that is the same thing about test checking. Test checking के जैसे ही है, almost same है, but you are just required to look after the things very much carefully now. So the topic is importance of probability theory. Importance of probability theory. So that means probability theory, this is particularly concerned with the determination of measure of probability of certain events. Certain events happening or non-happening. That is the probability. उसी को probability कहते हैं, right? It helps in particularly mathematically formulating the predictions of uncertain conditions. So okay, so probability theory is useful to auditor in following ways. Useful to auditor in following ways. Beta, that is the same as the previous topic, but the headings are different, right? So determination of, the very first is determination of portion of transaction verification, right? Identification of sample size. Assessment of measure of risk taken. By auditor. What kind of risk? Risk, that means by examining entire population. By not examining the entire population, the risk which he has taken for you can say for existence of the errors of frauds, you are going to measure that risk as well. Right? After that, the identification of sample size, that what is going to be the exact sample, what is going to be the portion of transaction verification. You have divided it into two parts, that yes, this part we are going to verify and this part we are going to leave. We will not verify this part as well. Right? So statistical sampling over here do carry some kind of advantages, and that do carry some kind of disadvantages as well. So first of all, we are going to talk about, first of all, let us talk about the advantages only. Let us talk about the advantages. The advantages is sample size control. Sample size. Right? So sample size control remains same and does not increase in proportion to size of population. Right? The next is objectivity. Next is risk assessment. Objectivity over here refers to that sample selection is more objective. Sample selection is more objective. That requires to be objective, that requires to be unbiased. Right? After that, risk assessment, that is again means for deriving a calculated risk. Right? After that, there is a better analysis from that huge mass of data. Right? That a complete examination of all data. After that, this is economical because you are just taking the samples. By time and money saving. Both of the things will be saved. Now, if I talk about this statistical sampling, this is appropriate in some areas, whereas it is not appropriate at few situations. Right? So please pause over here. Pause. Yes, pause. Yeah. So it's appropriate. When you will find large population. When the population or the data is too much, it's very high. When there is homogeneity. Homogeneity refers to, that means there are similar terms. There are similar items. Right? After that, moving on to next, selectable items. Items for checking, they are already selected. You have already identified them. And the risk is very low. The risk is reasonably very low. This can only be done when you have good internal control system. If you have good internal control system, your risk will be very much low. आपका risk बेटा बहुत कम हो जाता है, right? But this is also not appropriate at few situations. Pause, please pause. Very good, pause karo. Now, this is also not appropriate at few situations. This appropriate at few situations. Those situations are going to be being like when population is too small. बेटा सिर्फ जो जहां पे appropriate है उसको उल्टा कर दोगे, not appropriate बन जाएगा. Population is very diverse. very diverse and cannot be classified. Because if that cannot be classified, you cannot take samples. So चलो बताता हूँ. When it comes to any kind of samples, we used to make a classification that this is group 1, group 2, group 3. Then samples are taken. If you are going to take all the samples from 3, then you will give the result for 3 only. If you are going to take samples from 1, 2, 3, you will give a desired result of 1, 2, 3. Population is very much diverse, right? When the internal control system is weak, and unreliable, right? When you can say when exact accuracy is required, because when it comes to the probability part, they will not give you the exact accuracy, right? When legal requirements are involved. So in these kind of situations, my dear student, what you will find that statistical sampling is not necessary, right? Now, let's do one thing. Let's quickly wrap up this class. So we'll catch you in next class now, where we are going to talk about the rest chapters. I mean the next chapter. Yes, that is going to be somehow again different, but audit beta, this can be a little bit boring, but दिखाया था ना introduction में, this will give you a lot of. Now bye bye, take care of yourself. We'll catch you in next class. Bye.